Hello. It looks like we're live. This is really exciting. Hey, everyone. My name is Jerome Laxale. I'm the federal member for Bennelong. And thanks for tuning in to this first run of our Inside Parliament live session. First time I've done anything on YouTube live as well. So forgive me in advance if there's any bugs. This is very much a trial. I'd like to start with, of course, an acknowledgement of country here in Bennelong, where the traditional owners are the Wallamadigal people and the Camaragal people. I'm here in North Ryde on Wallamadigal land. I like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. As I've said, this is something I'm trialing after each sitting fortnight or each sitting period. It's something I know the former member for North Sydney, Kylie Tink, did. And those of you who live here in Bennelong would know that we've had a kind of amalgamation of the old Bennelong and new parts of Bennelong. So we thought we'd carry this over from the good work that, that the former member of North Sydney, Kylie Tink, did and trial this. In future, once we sort of scale up, we hope to get the right software to be able to patch people in, like ministers, to talk about key legislation, to get some policy experts in, for it to be a bit more interactive as well. There's of course the chat feature, and I've got some staff who are helping me moderate that. If there's anything untoward in there, we'll do what we need to ensure that that place is a safe place to ask some questions and make some comments. But please feel free to do that. Tonight, though, you've just got me. Sorry about that, and I'll go through sort of what happened in the last 2 weeks in Parliament. So each session, I mean, I could speak about what happened in Parliament for about 3 hours, which I will not do. Don't worry, we'll keep this to sort of 30, 40 minutes, and I'll obviously monitor how many people we've got online. If it's just me and one other person, I might end it a little bit quickly. But we've got a good number of people online now, so we'll keep on going, which is great. But we'll pick sort of 3 or 4 bits of legislation. We'll talk about some of the committee work that I've been doing. And obviously, some of the national news has been going about. We've had some people who have RSVP'd and sent some questions in advance. If there's a theme, we'll sort of wrap them together and we'll talk about it. But of course, messages from the chat we'll try and get to at some point as well. So hopefully that sort of sums up what we're doing. Hopefully you enjoy it. At the end of tonight, maybe tomorrow, you'll receive a survey from us. We want to try and make this enjoyable, for you to sit on the couch or in front of your phone or your laptop and just kind of get a bit of an insight as to what we do. So if you have any feedback for us or any ideas, please let us know. But yeah, definitely want to engage with you all as much as I can in this amazing job that I get to do on your behalf. So here we go, the start of the 48th Parliament, and it's been quite some time from the last time we were in Parliament until last week. I think March, we were there and obviously had the election in between, sat at the end of July, and the first couple of days were very much formalities and important things that parliaments need to do at the start. Bit of a makeup of the new government. The government has 24 new MPs and probably definitely the most diverse caucus ever. 50% of the Labor caucus are women. And I got to tell you, it shows. I sit there in question time. I've got a new seat sort of around the bend now, not directly behind the Prime Minister, which is a good and a bad thing, I guess. And you can kind of see, one side you've got a lot of suits, a lot of blue ties, and on the government side you sort of have much more diversity reflective of the communities that we represent, more representative of modern Australia, and that really shows when you take a look at the picture. So the formal opening took place on Tuesday, the 22nd of July. Lots of formalities, lots of procedures, dating back to our Westminster traditions. So we had the usher of the black rod like bang the door and say come over to the Senate, and then we had to follow the speaker out to the Senate, and then sit there and then be told by the representative of the Governor General that we had to go swear an oath, and then we had to walk back across and swear an oath. Of course, we elected a speaker, and what I was able to do was bring in a little bit of Bennelong into the chamber. This time round, I swore my oath on a Bible that I borrowed from St Charles. So shout out to Father Greg, who lent me St Charles of Borromeo's ceremonial Bible to officially swear my allegiance to the King and to serve the Australian people through that. So we, of course, heard a whole heap of incredibly moving first speeches from the new member for Dixon, Ailey France. I went into the chamber to listen to the first speech of our neighbour in Nicolette Buller, the member for Bradfield. And I guess one thing that stuck with me, just an extraordinary batch of new MPs, 94 members, 94 different stories, of course, but just some real experience from former diplomats, people who have fled war-torn countries, an incredible amount of cultural diversity, particularly on the government side, and a lot of expertise right across the parliament, which is what we need. Apart from the ceremonial stuff, we then sort of got into delivery, and that was really what we wanted to do in the first 2 weeks. A really strong focus on delivery and doing what we said we'd do. So the first piece of legislation we introduced was something that we promised we would do, and that was our plan to cut student debt by 20%, reform HECS, which I'll dive into a little bit later. We've also introduced legislation to enshrine penalty rates in law, and we've brought in really, really important reforms to improve safety in early childhood education, including powers to shut down centres that fail to meet national standards. So I'll go into some of those bills a bit later on. And look, I guess I'll try not to be too partisan in these sessions. I just kind of want to give you the information and for you to make your own decision. But on this, like, you contrast sort of what our priorities were in the first 2 or 3 bills that we brought to Parliament compared to that of the coalition. We were focused on cost of living and delivery, and the coalition's first bill that they introduced was to introduce a bill to abolish net zero and action on climate change. You would have seen perhaps Barnaby Joyce back in the news there, out there front and centre, and the net zero cheer squad, fighting the same fights we've been having over the past 20 years. And I mean, I think we should be still having those fights because, as fun as it is seeing them kind of tear themselves apart over their position on net zero, I think it's actually bad for the country that we don't have consensus on climate. So I think the more times we can debate this, and we will be debating this in August, the better, as if 2 elections and 2 mandates to deliver on climate action isn't enough. It still seems like the coalition don't have a position. I mean, even Peter Dutton had a position on net zero. Susan Ley still does not. They're reviewing it. And you've got Barnaby Joyce chucking grenades here and there. So, yeah, we'll have that debate, and just a big contrast. I'll get into the legislation a bit. Committees were also established. This is a really important part of a Member of Parliament's job when they're down in Canberra. You've got the ministers, obviously, that propose the legislation, and we go through a process there. And then parliamentarians get put on committees, and they act as the oversight of the Parliament, of legislation sometimes gets referred to these committees, and we have a sort of a public institution that come to public hearings and are held to account through there. So this term, I've been appointed to the Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters as chair, which is a real honour. To be a chair of a committee is a good sort of upgrade on being a backbencher. So very pleased to have taken on that extra responsibility, and something I really look forward to getting my teeth into. Reappointed to the House Economics Committee, which has oversight over the big 4 banks, over the RBA, over regulators like ASIC, APRA and the ACCC, and is able to hold its own inquiries. And I think this term perhaps will have an important role to play on that committee, given its scope on productivity, tax and revenue reform. And I was at the very end of the week, appointed to the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security, which is again, something I'm really keen on getting my teeth stuck into, oversight over our intelligence agencies and national security priorities. So that's important too. Just a comment from Thomas. Love your work, but to be fair, your government's first action was to extend the Northwest Gas Shelf. Yeah, look, I put a comment out about that at the time. I guess what that tells me is that the need to reform our environmental laws is as strong as ever. We had a really good crack at it in the last term, and for a variety of reasons, it didn't make it through Parliament. And there's competing stories out there, but at the end of the day, reform didn't make it through. We weren't able to establish an EPA. We weren't able to progress reforms to environmental law. In this term, Murray Watt, the Minister, has made it very clear that this is a priority for him. And the Prime Minister has also said it's a priority for the government. I don't know if anyone watched Ken Henry's speech at the National Press Club. If you haven't, I suggest you do. It's readily available online. Kind of outlines, I guess, Parliament's inability over a long period of time to update these laws that are not fit for purpose. They're not good for the environment. They're not good for business, and it's doing nothing what it's meant to do. It's not doing anything what it's meant to do in terms of protecting the environment and providing a path for any type of project, be it housing, energy, renewable energy, and the rest. So this law needs reform, and I'll be one of many MPs that will work with the government to keep this a priority and ensure that we get it through, that this is the Parliament that finally updates our environmental laws. Back to the committees, and I do note some of the comments there. I'm getting some staff to type it through, and we'll get to some stuff at the end. Economic Roundtable, of course, is coming up, so we'll have a chat about that right at the end as we close. So committees are there. The Standing Committee on Electoral Matters is something that, as I mentioned, I'm chair of, and something I'm really keen to engage with local communities over. This committee oversees how our elections work, how we protect our democracy, and how we ensure integrity and fairness in the electoral system. And I think a big theme of the committee's first inquiry, which will be into the 2025 election, will be safety and security. Those of you who it was reported, but also you might have seen it at pre-poll and polling day, there was something very odd about the 2025 election, and particularly when it came to voter experience. I had scores of emails in my inbox of people who had a really negative experience on election day or approaching the polling booth. I was on radio talking about it this morning with Hamish McDonald on 702. I'll never forget someone who was neurodiverse basically being screamed at on the way in, not enjoying it, and then leaving the polling booth just having an awful experience and saying, I never want to do that again. Now, our democracy is great. We're one of the most stable democracies in the world, and there are reasons for that. Participation is encouraged and welcomed. Robust debate is obviously part of it, but the last thing we want to do is head down a slippery slope where people do not feel safe. They feel, and if they feel overwhelmed when they're voting, they're less likely to vote at the next time. We need to keep our participation rates high, and safety and security form a big part of that. So that'll be a big theme. Obviously, there'll be voting access in 2022. There's a big focus on Indigenous enrolment and turnout in remote parts of the country. A few of people have mentioned a couple of other issues that we look at. There's a reporting on some discrepancies in voting in aged care facilities, on training of ASC staff. So all this stuff we'll have a look at, because there's a truth in political advertising, just sort of getting an update to where we are there. There was obviously legislation, sort of seeing where that lands. Maybe that committee can look at that, but also get some evidence from locals from volunteers and from stakeholders about uh, what happened in 2025 and what reforms, if any, are necessary moving forward. So, we can't take our democracy for granted. We always need to work to make it better and to protect it. And there's definitely a bit of work to do there. The next step will be that uh, sort of 12-month inquiry into the federal election. There's some technicalities we need to go through. We need to get terms of reference from the minister, set up the inquiry, but keep an eye out on future episodes of this, but also on my social media. And if you subscribe to my newsletters, you'll get there'll be opportunity for you to write a submission, to have your say. There'll be public hearings right across the country, in capital cities, remote and regional areas as well. We need to get as much evidence as we can so that we can make, as a committee, we can make evidence-based recommendations to give to the government. Okay, so I want to unpack some of the legislation that was across the 2 weeks. First one I'll go into is early childhood education reform. And obviously this has been pretty distressing stuff right across the country. Started, I think, to be a major issue for a lot of people when we heard those just awful news reports out of Victoria, and then it hit home most recently as well. We received the news last week of this distressing revelations from Operation Arctile, involving alleged child abuse across multiple out-of-school hours care services here in northern Sydney. Several centres in Bennelong were identified on the list, but it's since come out that there's no evidence of offending at majority of those locations. But I know how confronting and upsetting this has still been for our community. As a country, we need parents to have confidence in the early childhood education sector, and that's what our bill seeks to do. Obviously, the biggest lever the Commonwealth has is funding, and it's the states that, in most circumstances, set the regulations, but they obviously enforce them. What the bill changes, and it did pass both houses of Parliament by the end of the sitting fortnight, is it gives for the first time the federal government the power to cut off childcare subsidy funding to services that consistently fail to meet safety and quality standards. It allows officers to conduct spot checks unannounced, not to detect fraud, but to also flag safety concerns, and empowers the Commonwealth to publish sanctions against providers. This matters because the system needs to be better and we need to have confidence in it. There's still more work to go. This isn't the end of the reform. There's work to do on a national register of early educators workers. There's national reforms to do on working with children check. The government invests $16 billion a year in early education, and we have ambitions to make the early education sector more affordable and more accessible, universal. And that funding should come with strong expectations and real consequences. And that's what we introduced and passed the Parliament last fortnight. But yes, still much more to do. The education ministers meet regularly, and I think they're meeting in a couple of weeks to take the next steps towards those national educator registers and a unified working with children checks, already flagged for urgent review by the Attorneys General, but a lot more work to do there. So this is something I know Education Minister Jason Clare is incredibly passionate about. You may have heard him address this. These reforms haven't happened quickly enough. We've got the first piece of legislation in, and there'll be more to come in this space because it needs to. We need to have confidence in the sector for a whole heap of reasons, and we need to make sure that our kids are safe. And so bringing up poor performing centres to standard is the aim of this bill, but if we need to cut their funding and shut them down, we'll do that as well. We need to protect our kids. The next big piece of legislation we passed was in regards to student debt. Two really important parts of this bill, and the second one gets lost, but I'll touch on, the thing that was up in lights and flashing around was the 20% cut to student debt. Is a big deal. I think in Bennelong, there's around 24,000 people with a student debt. Average debt is around $5,500. This is a cost of living measure, but also tries to rebalance the scales of generational equity, right? Like it's hard being a young person in 2025. Things are incredibly expensive. Housing is expensive, and I think the economy expects a lot of people to either have a tertiary education, either through education provider or through TAFE, or a university degree, and that comes with the consequences of this student debt. So when I went to university a while ago, 20 odd years ago or so, I paid around, so the formula was about 60% was paid for by, 70% was paid for by the public and 30% was paid for by me through HEX. And now, after sort of 9 years of a federal government, it was 60% paid for by the Commonwealth and 40% paid for by the student. So this 20% off kind of rebalances to where it was about 20 years ago, and it brings down the balance of all help, vet student loans, Australian apprenticeship support loans, and student startup loans, and more. It's backdated to the 1st of June 2025. And to reverse the impact of indexation before it hit. The second important part of the bill is the repayment reform. And we've done two things there. We've lifted the repayment threshold from $54,435 to $67,000, which is a big jump. And we've also created a new marginal indexation repayment system. So before, you used to have to pay, the amount was calculated on every dollar you earned within that 54,000 or 67,000, but now we've changed that to only start calculating the repayments for every dollar earned over $67,000. And I'll go through that as an example. So someone earning $70,000 would currently pay $1,750 per year as a compulsory repayment. Under our changes, the compulsory repayment is $450 a year. That's $1,300 less per year as a compulsory repayment. If you want to pay more, obviously you can, and we would encourage that. But for those who have just got a degree or just got their trades, earning 70, 80 grand a year, that extra $1,000, $1,300 is huge. Right? It's a lot of money, and when housing is expensive, when cost of living is high, that $1,300 per year makes a real difference. So two really big changes: 20% off, reforming that repayment system. The ATO are now doing their system. 50,000 lines of code needs to be written so that these changes can be delivered. I don't know how long that takes, but it's a priority. Most people will see their debt cut before the end of the calendar year, and you don't need to do anything. The reductions are applied automatically. Trust me, if you follow any politicians, this will be like really all over the social media. You'll get emails about this. It'll be in the news. When it comes through, this is a big deal. And we've taken the advice from the Universities Accord to reform HEX and repayments. So we received a lot of, understandably, received a lot of early questions on Gaza and conflict in the Middle East. So I'd just like to address that, and varied questions, but all more or less around the same issue. Obviously, this is a conflict that is horrific, and the humanitarian crisis in Gaza is beyond the world's worst fears. We've said this from day one, and I think most Australians agree with this, that every innocent life matters. And I think the majority of Australians want an immediate and permanent end to this war. the release of all hostages. We want Israel to comply with international humanitarian law, and we want humanitarian aid to flow freely. If it's not clear, Australia remains committed to a two-state solution. It's been a bipartisan for a long time and something that's dominated the news in the last 2 weeks in particular. We believe that that's the only pathway to lasting peace, both for Palestinians and for Israelis. This has been at the forefront of. It's been the biggest issue in my inbox, and we've really tried to respond to everyone personally who's written to us on this. We will have to send out a bulk email because there's so many. So I was not surprised at the huge turnout at the peaceful protest on the weekend. Some people were surprised that 100,000 people turned out. I certainly wasn't, because I know that this has been an issue for locals here in Bennelong for some time. Overwhelmingly, people want this conflict to end and they want hostages returned. And on Sunday, we saw a peaceful demonstration of that in just incredible numbers. This is a deeply emotional issue for many in our community, and Sunday was a clear example of how strongly many Australians feel about the issue. We're all, distressed, angry, upset, and horrified about what we're seeing in Gaza, and the government shares that distress. I certainly share that distress, and it's a conflict I'd like to see end. We see there's real momentum towards Palestinian statehood. That's ultimately a decision for the Prime Minister in consultation with the cabinet, but it's pretty clear. It's not if we'll recognise Palestine, but when. We don't want the recognition of Palestine to take away or to distract from the peace process. We don't want a Palestine that has Hamas part of its future. So recognition must support the peace process and not undermine it. And what our focus is right now is a ceasefire. It's the hostage release, and it's clear aid access to those in need. Let me go to some questions. Keen to hear your thoughts on the economic roundtable. This is from Emily, Productivity Summit. What role our financial institutions should be. Look, I'm really thankful that the Treasurer has put this on the agenda. It's something that we did in the last term of government with the Jobs and Skills Summit. And, you always get the commentariat, sniping from the sidelines on this, but what comes out of these is indisputable. From that Jobs and Skills Summit, and this is just off the top of my head, we had consensus toward extending paid parental leave to 6 months to attract and retain women into the workforce, and to sort of make that a better system, building on what Labor introduced in 2007 or 2008, extending it to 6 months. We also got momentum from that Jobs and Skills Summit to pay superannuation on paid parental leave, an important reform. We also heard firsthand from businesses about the skills crisis, so we're able to get consensus to simplify and prioritise visas within the skilled visa stream. That came out of the Jobs and Skills Summit. Out of the Economic Roundtable, Productivity Summit, the Treasurer's made it clear he's looking for consensus on any measures that will increase productivity, have the budget return to a more sustainable footing, and you can't really look at productivity or budget repair without having some really big conversations about tax reform. I'm hopeful that some of those ideas get to come through our House Economics Committee, or they get to be fleshed out a bit further in some of our Labor committees. I'm on the executive of the Economics Internal Labor Committee as well. So very keen to see what ideas come out of that, the 3 days on the economy, on productivity, and on budget sustainability. Um, like we did with jobs and skills, once we sort of get a bit of a guidance out of the main summit, I'd like to host sort of a local economic roundtable guided by sort of the communique out of the federal one. So if that's something you're interested in, keep an eye out, email and socials to sign up. We did this with uh, businesses in Macquarie Park during the Jobs and Skills Summit. I'd like to do something similar if we can get it all together here locally, sort of have a Bennelong economic roundtable, and so keep an eye out for that. What do we got here? Helen Rubin, we'll be able to replay later. Yes, Helen, I mean, this is the first time we're doing this, we've done this before, so I think we can upload it to YouTube. It will be uploaded to YouTube, so you can watch it again. Um, Up to you. Sorry, hang on, I'm just reading some notes here. Yes, it will be uploaded so you can watch it. Absolutely. That's something that we will be doing. And as I said earlier, next time we do this, should have some more software to be able to patch in some people some experts and some ministers, hopefully, who can talk about the legislation that we've just introduced into Parliament and stuff. So that's it in terms of questions and comments. Hopefully you've enjoyed this tonight. We've hit half an hour, which is probably about the sweet spot where I wanted to go. Next time we'll get some guests, but I just really wanted to thank you all for being a part of tonight. We hovered around 30 people, 35 people joining in. Hopefully we can grow that at a future date, but thanks for being a part of tonight's Inside Parliament. If you have any questions, if we've missed out on some questions in the chat, please shoot them to us via email. We're happy to get you a written response as we get through our inbox. But yeah, you'll be notified of the next one of these, and hopefully you enjoyed it. I'm going to go have some dinner. See ya.